Hello crafty friends, I'm Lien from Studio Kato and I'm so glad you're joining me again today. Today I'm making another very summery card while the weather is anything but summery over here. I started out with a tag that I cut from Canson Montval 200 GSM watercolor cardstock and I die cut that with the Crafty Meraki Slimline Thanks tag die. Now to stamp this scene I am lining up the duck on top of the boat. Because I'll be doing some masking for the duck, and for that I need to know where the boat will be on my tag. Anytime you want to do some masking for a scene, you will be working from front to back. So I'll be stamping the little duck first, because his little feet will be over the boat. I stamped that in Versafine Onyx black ink and embossed that with Wow Clear Gloss Superfine embossing powder, and I heat set the duck first before putting on the mask and stamping the boat. I also stamped and embossed some seagulls and fish that come in the same stamp set, and then we can move on to the fun part, the coloring. Once again, I am using my Karin Brushmarkers. These are so fun to watercolor with. I say that every time, but it's still true. So I tried to put the caps of the pens I used on top of the screen so you can see which numbers I used. I don't do it every time. I still forget a lot. So please bear with me while I figure this out. I started with a light orange layer for the duck and then orange for the feet and its beak. And then I can come in with a bright yellow, the gold brush marker, to color in the rest of the duck again. I chose a color theme for this card of blue and yellow. I'm using some aqua for the blue, and that will be a nice, fun, and summery color palette. Even for all the accessories and the tiny little details, I am sticking to only a few colors. The only other colors I used besides pool and yellow are orange, red, and some brown for the boat. As always when coloring, I am putting some color down with my marker in the parts that I want to be the darkest, and then I can blend that out with some clean water on a very fine paintbrush. I'm keeping the shading fairly limited in this card because I wanted to keep everything a little bit lighter than usual. There's also already a lot going on in this card. There isn't right now, but there will be. So I just didn't think it was necessary to add a lot of shading on every little piece. I'm going to do the striped sail in pool and white, but I'm going to shade that white with a little bit of gray as well. I really like this pool color. Off screen I even colored a piece of that same cardstock that I'm using, the Canson Montval 200 GSM watercolor cardstock with that same pool marker. Just covered it completely, and I will use that as a sentiment strip. Using a limited color palette like this and even bringing it back in your sentiments or your background will make your card look more cohesive. I'm using the henna marker for the boat. This is a really nice warm brown. And again, I'll also be using that same marker for the little fishing line and anything else that I'm coloring brown. I am only using one shade for the brown. I really love this stamp set by Clearly Besotted. It's so adorable and it's always fun to color in these little critters. Clearly Besotted stamp sets also come with a lot of images, more than any other company that I'm aware of. So you get a lot of bang for your buck and you can switch up a lot of your scenes with the same stamp set. As you all know, if you've seen any of my Karin marker videos before, I don't like the gray markers, they don't blend nicely, so I tried to dilute it with water first and then paint it, but even then that didn't help. So I instead went back to my tried and true method of first painting on just some water and then dropping in the color with the marker. And that seems to be the only thing that works to really blend out those gray markers. Again, I do love these markers. I think they're a great watercolor medium, but the grays are one of its only weak points. I painted in that scene with a dark blue marker, and I'm just blending that out all the way to the bottom. Usually I always make my sea be darkest at the bottom and lightest on top, like it should be, but I thought this was a nice way to fade out the tag. Once again, I am using a brush that is way too small for its job, but I always forget to switch my brushes before I start to paint a larger area, and then once I've started painting it with a small brush, I'm too stubborn to switch my brushes. If you're painting though, make sure to adjust your brush size to whatever you're painting. If you're painting a large area, please don't use a tiny brush like I'm doing. Do as I say, not as I do. For these small fish and the seagulls, I'm keeping the coloring very simple. Again, not doing very much shading, but I will bring in some more red to the fish because I wanted that red to return. I used it on the little fishing hook and on the flag, so I wanted it to be in the fish as well. For the seagulls, I am using the dreaded gray markers again. I always use the warm grays, by the way. I don't know if I show the cap anywhere in this video, but yeah, I use the warm grays because that's just what I prefer. And I think for the Karin Brushmarkers, I always go for the midtones for whatever gray I'm using because the lightest ones are a little bit too light and the darkest ones are very dark. And like I said, bringing in some more of that lipstick red to tie in the fish to the rest of the scene. And that will be pretty much it. And then I can fussy cut those out and start on my background. Now for this background, I am using the Pinkfresh Studio Marigold ink, and I smushed that down onto a slick surface, mixed in some water, and I'm just using that as paint. I'm only doing this because I really like that shade of yellow. You can use any paint. You absolutely don't need to use inks for this. That's just a color I knew would work with this scene. So I'm just using a flat brush to paint on some quick stripes. I'm heat setting that, and then I can add some splatter with a metallic teal paint from Finetech. This is the Paradise set from Finetech, if I'm not mistaken. Now for the sentiment strip, I am layering a couple of strips of black cardstock behind it to add dimension. And I also added some pieces of scrap paper behind my scalloped tag. I didn't film that, but I did. I think I added 4 layers. This adds nice sturdy dimension. I can just use some liquid glue to glue it all together, so it doesn't take that much extra time, and it uses up your scraps. I'm adhering all the tiny little critters with some foam squares. I did use 3mm foam squares, and I thought those were a little bit too thick for the fish. So I'm replacing those with some thinner foam squares. I thought those were too thick because they were a little bit too close to the duck, and he should be the focal point, but he's not dimensional, so I didn't want to prop up the fish too much. For some small embellishments, I am using the Nuvo crystal drops in the Ivory Seashell color. This is a gorgeous pearl color, and it goes with pretty much everything. This was my go-to embellishment for the longest time before I invested in a few sequin mixes and some gems. But these are a great investment in your craft room, especially if you stick to some neutral colors. And again, I am making a matching envelope. This one is super simple. I am using some Canson Montval 200 GSM watercolor cardstock and following the directions on my 1, 2, 3 We Are Memory Keepers sponge board. I'm just rounding out the corners and then folding it all together. I stamped on one of the little fish and I'm painting that in with the same colors that I used on the card, using some pool for the water droplets, and then I will use a lighter blue for the water around it. To color in that little corner, I am just using a lighter blue, scribbling that on in some random spots, and then blending it out with a lot of water. And I will blend that out until it fades into nothing. I love adding a little peek of the scene that's on my card on my envelope. I think that's a really nice way to match the two. I'm adding in some more color, then heat setting that, and that's it. That's my card and envelope for today, all done. I love the bright yellow with the pool, and I love this little scene. And of course, I hope you like it too. If you did, make sure to leave a like on this video and leave your thoughts in the comments below because I would love to read them. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my videos. You can also find me on Instagram and on WordPress on a blog. You can find those links in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.